Hello, my friend. It is finally time, and I'm finally ready to share what has been going on, why I haven't been on YouTube. So I'm just gonna get right into this story. But before I start, I do just want to say that what I'm about to share is quite a vulnerable story. I really went back and forth on whether or not I should share this, just because, your health is something that is so personal, and everything that's happened in the last 2 months has actually been giving me a lot of stress and anxiety and fear, if I'm being honest. So I did just want to say that first. So just keep that in mind when watching or commenting on this video. And the other thing that I do want to also start with is that thankfully, I am okay. I don't want to scare anyone or anything, and I think that the biggest takeaway from this video should be that now I am on the road to recovery and feeling a lot better than I was even just like a month ago. I'm very happy to be able to start out this video by saying that. Okay, so let's get into what happened 2 months ago, this absolutely crazy story. And I'm not gonna get too graphic on the medical things because I myself am quite squeamish when I hear about those things, so I don't even really like to talk about them. But there is a lot of health talk and hospital talk and things like that. So if that does make you uncomfortable, I'm just warning you now that that is what's coming up. Okay, so everything actually started right after New Year's, start of 2025. I'm like, yes, this is gonna be a great year. And then I started having some aching in my upper jaw. Now, a little backstory, when I was 18, probably like most people, I had my bottom 2 wisdom teeth out. They told me that the top 2 were so far up that they would probably never come down and I would never have to worry about them. Well, fast forward to now, actually about 6 months ago, I noticed that my top right wisdom tooth did start coming down. It actually broke through my gums and I could feel just a little bit of it. And when I went to see the dentist, she was like, oh yeah, you should probably get your top 2 removed since they've come down a little bit. So I scheduled with an oral surgeon to get my top 2 wisdom teeth out. They were supposed to be taken out in March, so basically like now. And so when this tooth area started aching and I started kind of getting some headaches, I just thought, okay, the tooth is coming down a lot more. Maybe I can just feel like the movement or the bones or the pressure is causing my headache. So I remember the first or second day, I just took a Tylenol and it helped a little bit, but I still had a pretty bad headache. And the other thing was I just felt really tired. And so for the next couple days after that, it was kind of the same. I woke up with a really bad headache. I was pretty tired throughout the day. And I thought, okay, this is kind of weird. Maybe I should move up my appointment for the wisdom teeth removal. So I moved it up to the earliest they had, which was still maybe 5 or so days away. And then from that point on, things got progressively worse in terms of the pain. And also just I've never had a migraine before, but I'm pretty sure my symptoms were pretty similar to that. I became really sensitive to light and sound and all of a sudden felt nauseous as well. In hindsight, I'm sure that I had a fever, but just didn't know it at the time. I was not really thinking that it was an illness or a sickness or anything. I was just thinking okay, this headache's getting really bad. So after a couple days, I felt you know what, things are not getting better. I don't have my dental appointment for a few more days. I should probably just go see a doctor. I told them what was happening. I said, maybe it's infected. And so they just prescribed me a regular antibiotic and said, just keep taking, Tylenol or some pain medication and hopefully it will get better. But at that point, it was getting really bad. I was having trouble walking in terms of my head was pounding so much that I was in a bad way. It was not a good scene. I was trying to take care of my baby girl, but I was just could barely get off the couch. All I wanted to do was sleep. And I just remember thinking my head is just throbbing. Tylenol just wasn't even cutting it anymore. So at that point, I was talking to one of my friends. She used to be an ER nurse and she was saying, if the amoxicillin hasn't helped and the Tylenol is really not doing anything, you might want to just go to the ER and check and see if everything's okay. Now, if you know me, I do not like hospitals at all. I am super needle phobic. IVs freak me out. Just the whole hospital setting, I already get really anxious and uncomfortable. So for me to agree to go to the ER, I know that I must have been in really bad shape, because I remember telling Q, my husband, I was the one who was actually hey, I need to go to the ER. And he was like, what, really? And I was like, yeah, let me just get checked out, because Like, I'm barely functioning right now. I had barely been eating. I could barely take a shower. It was really bad. So we drove to the ER, and then of course my husband actually had to stay with our daughter. So he just dropped me off at the ER, and I remember I could barely walk. I had to grab a wheelchair. I explained to the doctor everything that was going on, and they said, we're just gonna run some tests and kind of figure out what this could be. So the doctor mentioned maybe meningitis. They wanted to do like a sample of my spinal fluid or something. I remember I was really freaked out about that. They ended up not doing that test, but that was one of the ones that they thought it could be. And then also, since I had been complaining about headaches so much, the doctor decided to run a CT scan of my brain. She's like, I don't think there's anything there, but let's just run one just in case. So after waiting around, of course, for like the scans to come back, for the doctor to assess them, and at the ER, everything just kind of takes a while. And at that point, it's like the middle of the night. I'm exhausted. I just want to go home and go to sleep. And I get in to see the doctor, and I'm like, I'm gonna go home after this, right? And she goes, I don't think so. And I remember my heart just sank. Like, I just knew something was wrong, and I'm like starting to freak out again at this point. And she just sits with me and she says, I saw something on your brain CT scan, and I'm not sure exactly what it is because we're not a hospital that specializes in neurology. So I want to send you down to another hospital. And I'm like, what did you see on the scan? She's like, I can't tell for sure. I just see some kind of a mass. And until we do an MRI, I won't know for sure, or the doctors won't know for sure. So we need to get you to a different hospital, and we need to get you in for an MRI ASAP. We are going to ambulance you to this other hospital. They have a whole neurology team there, and they were going to be able to get me into an MRI right away there. So again, it's the middle of the night, and actually, thank goodness I had messaged one of my friends to pick me up from the ER because I had been planning to go home, and Q was at home with baby girl. So she was gonna pick me up and take me from the ER back home. And I messaged her and I said, they're transferring me to another hospital. And she came and waited with me, her and her boyfriend. I can't even believe like how sweet they are to do that. It's like the middle of the night, and they waited with me all night and all morning. So I get sent in an ambulance, transferred to the new hospital, and a bunch of doctors start coming in, like throughout the rest of the night and into the morning. People would come in and check on me in terms of like, they were asking me a lot of specific questions. I could tell to kind of check like my brain function. Like, do you know where you are? Do you know what day it is? What year it is? Can you lift up your arms and your legs? So I could tell it was like they were quite concerned about my brain function at that time. And so luckily they were able to get me in for an MRI pretty quickly right there in the morning. And honestly, the next 12 hours after that are pretty much a blur because everything just moves so quickly. Once the MRI was done, I had a neurosurgeon come in and basically say, here's the situation. You have an abscess in your brain. It's most likely caused from the infection from your wisdom tooth traveling into your bloodstream and then into your brain, and it creates a swelling, and basically it needs to be drained, and we need to find out what this bacteria is and treat you for it. And I am just in complete shock and disbelief at this point. They have someone coming in saying like, do you consent to doing brain surgery? You have to sign all these forms. And I am just like totally overwhelmed with like, what? Like, what have you just told me? What's going on? So pretty quickly after that, I was taken into surgery. And of course, I don't remember really anything from surgery until kind of like the next day. Like I said, the whole kind of day of surgery and everything is really a blur. Thankfully, after surgery, everything kind of calmed down. What they found from surgery is that it did seem to be some kind of bacteria. They tested it and were able to prescribe antibiotics specific to what it was. Even though they did drain everything out first, it's just a precaution to also be on antibiotics after this kind of a surgery. And I was waking up with a whole head full of staples, and luckily, I'm sure they have me on a lot of pain medication. I didn't really have any pain or anything like that while I was in the hospital, so that was all fine. like I said, it was just the next few days being in the hospital and recovering. So while you're in the hospital, they are checking on you a lot, especially all the doctors come by quite regularly, and they continue to do a lot of the tests of, do you know where you are, what year it is, can you move your arms and legs, etc. So that continued for the next 5 days, as well as having nurses come in with your medication and also shining a bright flashlight into your eyes to check something about your pupils. I'm not exactly sure, but that happened quite a bit. And just being in a hospital setting is already a little bit uncomfortable. You know, the beds aren't super comfortable. You have other people in your hospital room, and it's just not a very restful environment. So I was there for about 5 days after surgery, but I was just really itching to go home. So on one of my final days in the hospital, they had to put in a PICC line, which had never heard of that before. So in case you haven't heard of that either, it's like I would say like a temporary IV line, but it stays in your arm for many weeks. So they wanted to keep me on this antibiotic that was put in through an IV as well as an oral antibiotic. So again, me being very IV phobic, this was like one of my worst nightmares. Just having it in my arm for the next 6 weeks was pretty uncomfortable for me. Not to mention that the antibiotics that I was on were very, very hard on my system. I continued to just feel exhausted. So once I got home, we had a home nurse come and show us how to use the IV to put in the antibiotics. And so my husband, who has been absolutely amazing throughout this whole entire process. He's been taking care of me and of our baby, been taking care of the house and everything that I usually do. He has just taken on in addition to work and everything else that he does. So I am so, so thankful for him. But he became my nurse for my IV. He had to give me the medication twice a day. And then after that, of course, I still had to get this wisdom tooth out because it hadn't even come out yet. So that was a whole nother like few weeks of recovery just with, you know, not being able to chew on this side. And then we ended up having issues with the arm IV and I had to go back to the ER not once, but twice on 2 different occasions. I'm like over here trying not to use my arm, the arm that the IV is in, trying to take care of my daughter. And I remember it was like, I just felt so fatigued and like even standing up, I would get dizzy really easily. So I could barely stand for more than like 5 or 10 minutes. Even just, you know, playing with my daughter on the floor, like I would get tired doing that. So it has just been a lot of stress. It's been a lot. It actually wasn't until just a couple weeks ago that I started even feeling better. I have a lot more energy now. Probably has a lot to do with the fact that I'm off the antibiotics now. So just for like those 6 weeks straight, I was just like barely surviving. I was just every day just like, okay, let me just get through the day and try and get a little bit better each day. I was just trying to keep that positive mindset of like, you know, I'm so thankful to be alive. I'm so thankful that I have my family here and that I'm able to recover at home. I am really so thankful that ultimately this is not like a life-threatening issue. We were able to resolve it with surgery and like ultimately I am gonna be okay. I had to tell myself that every single day just to keep myself, you know, calm and keep myself going. So thankfully I have had my follow-up CT scan and everything is clear. I have been off the antibiotics now for a couple weeks and am feeling so, so much better. I'm trying to definitely focus on healthy foods, brain healing foods, and really kind of get my body back to a very healthy place. The only thing that is still not 100% back to normal is my vision. It's weird to try and describe this. Like obviously I can still see, I still have my vision, but something is different than it was before surgery. The best way I've been able to explain it is like there's just kind of like brightness everywhere. I don't know if that makes sense, but it's not 100% back to normal. And when I met with the neurosurgeon, he said, you know, recovery from a brain surgery procedure can take anywhere from 3 months up to a year. So he did say, you know, if you didn't have any vision problems before surgery, most likely everything will go back to normal. It may just take some time. So that was, of course, you know, reassuring to hear, but also frustrating that like, okay, not everything's back to normal right away. I mean, at this point, there's nothing really I can do except to be patient. And like I said, it doesn't really affect me on the day-to-day. I can still see. So they do want to do some more investigation into why all of this happened. I think that's one of the other really frustrating parts for me, is that I feel like I take my health very seriously. I make it a priority in my life, and I feel very healthy, like I hardly ever get sick. Like honestly, even during COVID, my husband got COVID and I was fine. I just feel like I never get sick. How did something like this happen to me? And when I expressed that to my doctor and the neurosurgeon, they're both just like, this isn't related to health necessarily. This is like just one of those crazy accidents. There's nothing really you could have done to prevent it. They said, even if you had gotten the wisdom tooth out sooner, that site could have gotten infected and this same thing still could have happened. So while it is very frustrating for me to have had this happen, I do just try and look at it again as like an opportunity to be grateful and to remind myself not to take my health for granted, just so that I remember to continue to eat healthy and exercise and do all the things that make me feel great. Because honestly, the thought of not being here and having my daughter grow up without me was one of the most heartbreaking things that I could think of throughout the whole time that I was sick. So again, if there is a takeaway from this, I do want to just kind of spread that message and remind everyone that your life is precious. You need to take care of yourself. And so I hope I can help remind you to do that. I also do just want to say a huge, huge thank you to everybody who has prayed for me, sent well wishes, sent sweet messages and DMs. Like, you guys are so amazing and so sweet and kind and thoughtful. I'm just so grateful to this amazing community. And so like I said, thankfully, we are ending this video on a happy note because I am in full recovery mode. I am feeling so much better. So with that, I just want to say again, thank you for being here. And also, take a moment right now and just do a little gratitude for whatever it may be in your life, something that you're thankful for. Just say it to yourself, or if you feel like it, you can definitely share it in the comments. Share with us what you are grateful for. I would love to hear from you, love to hear how you are all doing, and I just love you all so much.